I want to welcome you to Convergence, where religion, leadership, and culture merge. It's a podcast brought to you by the Coleman Center at Athens State University, a part of the Religious Studies program here. And we're in this beautiful chapel that has so much history. And I'll get to that in a moment. But I wanted to first acknowledge that I'm doing this rather solo today. I'm usually joined by Dr. Eric Betts, or occasionally by Dr. Tony Moyers. Neither one of them could be here today. And so I'm going to introduce a new series that we're doing. But I'll say more about both of them in a moment. But I'm doing this on my own, but not really. Behind the scenes here, I have Grayson, Grayson, thank you. Again, I want to say thanks for all the work that you do to make this a possibility. And so Grayson, here we are in this beautiful chapel. And when I was a student years ago, I came to this chapel. We would actually have class in this very room. Occasionally, we would do voluntary worship services here, and those of us who were students in the religious studies program would occasionally have the opportunity even to lead the worship. I remember when it came my time to do that and how nervous I was to be here in front of my peers as students. But such a meaningful place, and across the years, here we are, at least for me, full circle to come back and be here as a professor and to get to teach in the religious studies program. And if you're listening to this, maybe you didn't know that Athens State has a religious studies program. It seems to be a revelation sometimes for people to learn that we have a program like this. It is a state university, and yet at the same time, we get the opportunity to study religion. And this religious studies program has been around for a long time here at Athens State, almost 100 years or so. And so I'm part of this rich tradition in this room, and it makes me think as I think about this series that we're going to be doing in the weeks to come. We're going to do a series on loosing and binding, the art of interpreting the Bible. We're going to look at how Jesus interpreted it. I'll get more into that in a moment. But I wanted to just set it up that way so that you'll know that in the weeks to come, we're going to be talking more about interpreting the Bible. Again, my role today will simply be to introduce that for us. I mentioned Dr. Eric Betts and Dr. Tony Moyers. Look, they both will bring to the table gifts that will be so insightful. And if you're thinking for a moment that this is going to be like a lecture or a boring conversation, let me tell you, this will be a lively conversation. They each will bring a perspective to the table that will be enriching and helpful in the study of the Bible and how to interpret it. Eric is a liberation theologian, and he is a teacher, and Tony is also... He is a professor here at Athens State, and he brings with him this gift. He's written a text. Actually, I have the text with me. It's Reading Responsibly. So he's done a lot of study in the area of how to interpret the Bible, and at the same time, he is really steeped in the wisdom tradition of the Hebrew Bible. So they bring different perspectives of what I'm saying. And I have lived a lot of my academic life and also as a pastor across the years, lived a lot of my life in the Gospels. And so if I bring any expertise, it would be in that area. So what I'm trying to tell you is that as we come to this topic on how to interpret the Bible, it is something that is interesting. I think, at least for us, it will be. I hope it will be interesting and life-giving for those of you who listen to this podcast. So I'm looking forward to that. As I'm sitting here, I'm mindful of how my life, and my way of thinking has evolved across this journey of a lifetime. When I came here, Grayson, when I came in as a student, I thought there was one way when it came to a matter of faith or to the Bible itself. There was just one way of seeing and understanding. I thought there was one worldview, and that was a worldview that everyone embraced. When I came here as a student, I discovered that there are many worldviews, and that those worldviews shape each perspective. If we find ourselves in a particular tradition or in a particular way of understanding the world, especially the world of faith or the Bible, that it will shape the way I read it, the way I understand it, the way I interpret it. I mean, it was here as a student I first discovered that there are many ways of reading and understanding a text that is not set in concrete, that it actually has multiple ways of being read and understood. And that interpreting the Bible, well, that was something that is not optional. All of us, when we come to the Bible, we're called on to make the call, to interpret. We decide. What version of the Bible are you reading from? And we're going to read from the King James and the New Revised Standard Version. How am I going to hear it? And how has my past, my education, the way in which I was brought up, if I was brought up in a faith community, how did that community interpret the Bible? All of those things, what family am I a part of? All of those things would have shaped and did shape my understanding of how to read and interpret the Bible. What I discovered here, and a lot of it was happened here in this chapel, I discovered that was true for all of us, and that we don't all agree, that we all come from a bit of a different background. And instead of that being a negative thing, I discovered that is such a powerful and enriching thing. But it opened me up. It caused me to ask some questions. And when it came to the Bible and reading the Bible, I think it created in me a bit of humility. I hope it did, is that I was willing to listen to others, to their understanding, and think about it. I learned to ask questions and the value of asking questions when it comes to the Bible, which is so important. I think what happens for all of us, it certainly was true at a time in my life, I think what happens is we often mistake the shadow for the substance. We to use Paul's words, or to say it another way, we mistake the facade for the real thing. Let me say it this way. My wife owns some gift shops, co-owns them, and she traveled, and I went with her one time to Las Vegas, and we stayed in the Venetian. Now, if you've never been to the Venetian, let me tell you, it's a beautiful hotel. It's a great place. You walk in, and the ceilings are painted like the sky in an Italian skyline. The paintings that are hanging in that hotel are amazing. It's beautiful. But So I was amazed when I went there. But a couple of years later, I had a chance to actually go to Venice, to stand under that sky, to see that in person, to understand how beautiful Venice was and the sky. Let me tell you, there's just no comparison. Venetian's beautiful, but it's a facade. The sky under Venice, wow, it was beautiful. So I was doing this event in a chapel, and I was using that comparison, and we were using Gregory Alan Asakoff's song, the Stable Song, and there's a line in it where he says, "I threw stones at the stars, but the whole sky fell." And we were doing this theological reflection on that phrase when someone asked me, "Hey, what happens if you do throw stones at the stars? What if I do ask questions? What if I do open up a little bit and the whole sky falls, the whole thing crumbles? What then?" And the only thing I could think of in response was the story I just told you, is that maybe when we throw rocks at the stars, what we're really throwing at is the ceiling being the tradition, the way that we understand things. And what if that were to crumble, what opens up to you is the vast sky, the real, the vastness and the beauty of something far more impactful in life? I think that too many of us actually we probably live most of our life, especially when it comes to the Bible, we probably live our life mistaking the ceiling for the sky. There's a difference. And I think there's a difference when it comes to the Bible. When it comes to the Bible, so many of us think about the Bible as something set in concrete, as something literal. We're forgetting that we were given a particular system, a tradition, if you will, of reading and understanding the Bible. This will be true especially for those of you who grew up in a faith tradition. And that's important. Being given the gifts, the tradition that you were given, the system, the way of understanding the Bible, that can be very, very helpful. It can also be a bit confining. So I compare it to this. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. I learned to ride a bicycle with training wheels. I was glad for the training wheels. It certainly kept me off of the pavement and out of the grass some. I learned how to ride that bicycle with those training wheels. But I can tell you, the day we took those training wheels off and I was able to ride a bicycle, it's liberating. It's exhilarating. What I'm trying to suggest to you is that when it comes to reading and understanding the Bible, whatever system or tradition you grew up with, you can see that as training wheels. You be thankful for that. Be grateful for it. But take from that tradition what has been helpful to you, but you no longer ride with training wheels. You're liberated. You're free to ride the bike, to feel the wind. And reading the Bible is that way. Too many of us shackle the Bible into one particular system, one particular way of understanding the Bible. It has to be that way or we're not being true to the Bible. I want to say something to you. If that's your understanding of reading the Bible, I would respectfully disagree. I'll tell you this, I think the Bible's better than that. I think the Bible is more beautiful than that. It's more beautiful than one particular system of interpreting. There are many different ways of interpreting the Bible. And there are real important aspects of the text that you have to consider when reading the Bible. Like, what is the historical context? What is the literary style of the text? What is the main idea, the thrust that the writer is trying to convey in that text? Hey, look, that's why when Eric and Tony join this podcast, there'll be so much that they will add to this that I think you will really not only learn a bit, I think you'll enjoy the conversation that happens, because the Bible is meant for a living conversation. If you see it literally and you place it in concrete, then it has nothing left to say to us. But if the Bible is a collection of books, a library where writers wrote this text across thousands of years, and if it's open and meant to be interpreted and it creates conversations, there's something life-giving about that. It really something enriching that can help each one of us in understanding the Bible. And whether you're coming to the Bible from an academic perspective, you just want to learn more about the text and how to interpret, great. Those of you who are coming to this topic from a faith perspective, I simply am trying to suggest that when it comes to the Bible and reading the Bible, stay open. Be willing to, you can hold on to your tradition, to your conviction, but I hope that you'll be open enough to understand that the Bible itself is not set in concrete. It is open-ended and has to be interpreted. The Bible always has to be interpreted. Like, for instance, let me give you an example. The verse, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. That's straightforward, right? There's no reason to interpret a text like that. It wouldn't need interpreting. Well, I don't know. You tell me. What does it mean what day is the Sabbath? Is that a Saturday or a Sunday? And what does it mean to keep a day holy? Can you wash your car on that day? Can you play ball in the yard with your children? What's allowed, what's not allowed? See, all of that is an act of interpretation. So whether we realize it or not, learning how to interpret the Bible is so very important for all of us. And in order to do that, I hope that we, in this series, can learn from Jesus. Jesus was a Jewish rabbi. He was more than that, agreed. He certainly wore a prophetic mantle. He was referred to in the Gospels as Messiah, and ultimately in the Gospel of John as Lord. But one of the things that Jesus did, and so often it shows up in the Gospels, Jesus was a Jewish rabbi. He was part of a rabbinic tradition. Now, here's the thing about rabbis. You see, the rabbis in Jesus' day took the Torah, the law, and they would interpret that law. They would take a text and they would meditate and teach on that particular text. And what they would do it's called loosing and binding. Loosing and binding is the art of taking a text, and is this going to be a teaching that is restrictive, or is this something that should be more liberating when you're looking at a text? So Jesus would teach in this particular way. He would the various interpretations of the law, and by the way, different rabbis had different interpretations. Imagine that. Jesus did loosing and binding in the Gospel of Matthew. When he says, "You've heard it said of old, but I say unto you," what is he doing? He's actually saying, well, you've heard the traditions that we have. This is the way you've heard it before, but I say unto you, and he gives a teaching. He is loosing and binding the text. This is found in the Sermon on the Mount. So learning to loose and bind is also important. So Jesus not only did this as a Jewish rabbi, guess what? In the Gospel of Matthew, he turns that authority over to his followers, which across the generations, each generation has to learn to take the text, the Bible, and you have to learn to loose and bind. You have to learn to interpret. For instance, there are plenty of issues we will bring up in the weeks to come, like the issue of slavery. How is it that in the 1800s, some preachers stood in pulpits in the South and defended slavery from the Bible, and others condemned it in a prophetic way? And how is it now that, and thank God, I say that openly, I thank God that we don't teach and don't believe or live in a way where slavery is tolerated. The Bible is better than that. It's more beautiful than that. But you could actually interpret the Bible in ways that enforce that perspective. So in the weeks to come, we're going to talk about a lot of different topics about how to interpret the Bible. I hope that you'll join us. What about the role of women in leadership? There are so many topics and issues that impact our life, and how the Bible shapes those viewpoints. So I hope you'll come along, that you'll join us, that you'll be a part of this conversation, that you'll allow us to talk together about how do we learn to loose and bind in our time. How do we learn to read the Bible and interpret in ways that are life-giving? Here's what I think about the life of with having lived with the Bible all these years. I think, at times I've forgotten how life-giving and how beautiful and impactful the Bible can be, how it has quietly shaped my life and how it shapes your life and understanding of, you can't study the history of the country without understanding that the Bible had some bit of influence on our history. So the Bible continues to speak, and how we interpret it, that's important. It's important for all of us. So come join us. Come join us in this conversation as we talk together in the next few weeks. I appreciate you being a part of this podcast. I appreciate you joining me, and look forward to continuing the conversation in the weeks to come. Take care.